5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning, Leavenworth citizens. This is my 6th Facebook Live Town Hall. We're conducting them once a week and focused on the COVID-19 virus. And each of these weeks seems to go by a little bit more quickly. But I'd like to introduce as the city manager, Mr. Paul Kramer, who's been with me on all 6 of these Facebook Live Town Halls. And he'll speak a little bit later about some of the city services and be looking at taking questions from the audience. And I do encourage you to ask questions if you have them. Our guest expert today is Mr. Keith Ricard, who is the executive director of the Leavenworth Guidance Center. And the Guidance Center is a community-based nonprofit agency that serves as a local community mental health center for Atchison, Jefferson, and Leavenworth counties in Kansas. The Guidance Center provides a full range of quality outpatient and inpatient referral and release services for individuals, families, and businesses for those counties. And in about 30 seconds, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ricard, and he'll give some opening comments. And then please, if you have questions, submit questions to him, and I'll probably have some questions. But I've talked about the importance in this new normal. I mean, there are a lot of benefits in terms of getting closer, having a closer relationship with family, particularly family. But it can get hard being cooped up and not being able to get out as we have in the past. So there are sometimes people do struggle with that type of situation, and it could affect their mental health, behavioral health. So I'm very conscious of that, and I've mentioned the Guidance Center and other resources and other organizations within the city and also the county that are available if people need help. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ricard. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Mike. Well, first of all, I just want to let everyone know that the Guidance Center is still open, and we are still delivering services on a daily basis and actually on a 24/7 basis as well. Our physical offices at 500 Lemmet Street are essentially closed for public access. The doors remain open for access to our on-site pharmacy as well as for crisis assistance. Our crisis and intake clinicians are working remotely. They are in the building, but if you come in and need services on a crisis or routine basis, we'll take your contact information and call you within moments to begin the intake process and to begin you in the process of receiving services. We obviously have been affected by this crisis as well. I do have some staff that are on site, many of whom, though, are working remotely from their homes. But all of our clinicians, all of our case managers, all of our therapy staff, including our medication management providers, are working on a daily basis from 8 to 5 and sometimes later. So it's still possible to receive services. I'm very proud of my staff for finding a way to make this possible, to be available to their clients, and we are seeing good acceptance of telehealth means of delivering our services. I just remind you of our telephone number if you need services or know someone who needs services, but it's 682-5118. And also, if you need services after hours, the phone number is 888-260-9634. We have been able to sustain our services over this period of time, in part because of the federal stimulus relief that has been provided. The Paycheck Protection Program is one that the Guidance Center Board authorized me to apply for, and we did receive significant funding for about 2 months for salary, benefits, and some other related and qualified costs. So we've been able to sustain operations even though we've seen a significant dip in revenue from third-party payers during this time. But It's our commitment to the community and to our clients that we continue to be here for you each and every day, every minute of every day, for support and ongoing services. Finding the ingenuity to do this really, I think, is really created by this crisis. One of the common statements at our place is that crisis is the opportunity for growth, and we are seeing growth in our staff and as well as in our clients. We're looking for new ways to deliver care and to take care of the people of our community, and we certainly are living out that motto presently of crisis being an opportunity for growth. There are a lot of things that you can read on social media as well as the news about how to manage and to get through this particular crisis. And I don't think that I necessarily have anything unique to share that maybe you haven't heard already. But certainly during this time, we need to be mindful and taking the steps necessary to really take care of ourselves personally as well as our families. You know, we think about taking care of body, mind, and spirit, not just one of those, but all of those. We've learned over these many years of the interconnectivity between the body, the mind, and our spiritual selves. And it's so important for us just to take time each and every day to reflect, just to stop in a quiet place and just reflect. How am I feeling physically? And how am I feeling emotionally? And what do I need to do to care for myself during this time? And certainly when we think about caring for our bodies, we do all of the things we've been taught for a long time. But now that we're perhaps more in solitude, we need to do that more than ever. And we have time to think through that, of eating well, of sleeping well, of exercising on a daily basis. All of those things that we know are critical for a healthy body, because when you start with a healthy body, you can manage life stresses much more easily. But also taking care of your mind, doing the things necessary to just acknowledge whether or not you're experiencing normal signs, symptoms of being isolated routinely from others, some sadness, some difficulty. I read something recently that some of us are really kind of experiencing grief during this time. Grief of the loss of routine, the grief of loss of regular contact with family members and our grandchildren. And so this is a time for us to really kind of reflect and make certain that we know how we're feeling and be able to express that to caring others. You know, I've seen a lot of creativity through Facebook and others of what families are doing and what individuals are doing for one another. And just yesterday, I heard of some people that bought dozens and dozens of Hostess ding-dongs and went around ringing doorbells and leaving them on the doorsteps of those friends and family members, just to say, we care about you, we're thinking about you, and we miss you. That's the kind of creativity that these kinds of crises really create for us during these times. It is important for us to reach out and stay connected to other people. We obviously need each other. We were created for a relationship with each other, and this is never more obvious than it is right now, and it's causing us to be creative in the ways that we make that happen. And so I just wanted to tell you that your Community Mental Health Center is here for you. It is important to stay healthy emotionally and mentally. And I know, too, that we have a lot of people in our community that are recovering from substance abuse disorders. And make certain that you are connecting with your therapy providers, but also with the Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and Al-Anon during this time. I believe most, if not all of them, are adapting to do Zoom groups. And I know that those in recovery really need that ongoing and perhaps even daily support. You can find an AA or NA meeting just about any hour of any day of the week. And so I just really encourage you to do that. So those are the things, some of the things that I wanted our public to know about the services at the Guidance Center and their ongoing availability. I come to the office every day just to make certain that things are operational, that our staff are well, And thank goodness none of our staff have reported any illness or sickness. We have had no reported cases of the virus affecting any of our staff. And so we feel very blessed that we're continuing to be able to meet the needs of the local citizens. So, Mike, that's
Okay.
what I would share.
Any questions? Paul?
Not so far.
I have a question. With respect to the last 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, have you noticed, has there been, in terms of services requested, has there been a spike, or are things pretty much steady state? What are you noticing?
You know, one day last week, we did 7 new intakes on one particular day, all via telehealth, telephone contact, or Zoom contact. And so we don't really see any interruption in demand for services at this time. The volume, overall volume of service has gone down because telehealth sessions seem to last less lengthy a period of time than face-to-face sessions do. That's why we've seen a dip in our revenues, of course. And so we continue to kind of monitor that. But all of my clinicians are staying busy each and every day. They actually report some clients prefer the telehealth means of service delivery. And we may find ways to continue that even after the crisis for those that prefer it. So that'll depend upon some powers to be at the state to open up some of those billing codes for ongoing telehealth services. They've opened them up during the crisis, and hopefully they'll see the need to perhaps do that on an ongoing basis.
Has your staff, have your clinicians adjusted well to this new environment and to this new, maybe not new, but certainly more frequently used method of delivering services?
You know, they really have. I'm really proud of the staff that we have that made such quick adjustments to the technology and to the way of connecting with their clients. And they're really working as a team. Our support staff that are scheduling appointments, communicating that to our clinicians. We're really seeing good collaboration and cooperation amongst our staff members during this time. And they're supporting each other as well. I give them, I send a weekly email to all staff, just updating them on the status of our work, client response, the financial ramifications of what we're experiencing so that they're involved and engaged in helping us to be successful moving forward. We have some staff who don't actually deliver direct care, some van drivers and some support workers for groups that we're not running, and they've volunteered to help with some special projects around data entry and painting and cleaning, special physical projects going on. And so we're catching up on some things during this time as well.
Yeah, that opportunity to catch up on things, I think we're taking advantage of that opportunity here in the city, whether it's in the city hall here, in the maintenance service center, or out and about within the city. So that is one benefit for organizations and facilities to catch up on some things that may have been deferred. Any questions, Mr. Kramer?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Well, I might just add one more thing than Mike. I know that, you know, we're all experiencing some different emotions, and certainly we're into I think the 5th week of sheltering at home, and that's getting old for a lot of people. And there are normal feelings of sadness, irritation, frustration, irritation, but it's important to know the difference between the normal response to this kind of a situation versus slipping into maybe a more serious condition of depression or anxiety, or even having suicidal thoughts or feelings. And so I just want to reiterate again our after-hours crisis number for those who might be feeling especially depressed or even contemplating suicide. There seems to be an epidemic of that growing again in America. So our after-hours number is 888-260-9634. I might also provide you with the National Suicide Hotline or Talk Line, which is 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. So I think it's just important that, once again, as we reflect daily on how we're feeling, that we acknowledge to others how we're feeling, and that we reach out for help and support. Locally, we're here available to you, but also there are national resources to help every citizen in America.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a question. I don't know if it's for you or for Mr. Rickard or both. Can you please address why the Mental Health Task Force has asked the County Commission to remove the question from the August ballot?
Could you do that, Mr.?
I could do that. The Guidance Center presently is generating about 50% of the revenue that it normally generates from third-party payers. And we anticipate tax revenues for the city, the county, the state to be significantly impacted by the financial crisis created by the COVID crisis. We've been working on the task force for quite some time. We've identified the needs. We wanted the voters to decide whether or not to increase the mill levy at the county level by $1.164 million. But it just seems that this is not a good time to ask our citizens to ante up for additional tax dollars, knowing that they're struggling financially. A lot of businesses are closed, not generating any revenue whatsoever, and so we just felt at this time that it would be insensitive and inappropriate for us to ask the citizens for an additional $1.1 million when they're struggling to meet the current needs of the city budget, the county budget, et cetera. So it was a hard decision, but at the same time, we just felt that it would be insensitive for us to ask for a tax increase during this time.
Yeah, and we haven't, I mean, we have, and I think the county commission is going to act on that today during their meeting. But we haven't given up, because I am a member of the Mental Health Task Force. A lot of great work done by Mr. Rickard and Commissioner Vicky Cause and other members of the task force. So we are not abandoning this goal, and we'll take a look as we come up to the general election in November. And if things are better, you know, maybe we could put it on as a ballot question during that particular general election. But even if we don't, 2021 will come, and we're not going to. We've done the work. We're going to at some point put it out there to the voters within Leavenworth County. It's just a matter of, as Mr. Rickard said, the timing is not right now, and but we haven't abandoned our work, and we will, at the appropriate time, once again ask the Board of County Commissioners to get the ballot question in front of the voters during one of the upcoming elections, whether that's the one in November 2020 or sometime in 2021. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, the need certainly has not diminished. The need is still very much there, but these are unusual times, times we've never really experienced in America before, but it was just a decision that we felt was necessary at this time.
And I think we know that, I mean, we had a program, and part of our recommendation was to put clinicians in all the schools within the county, but Leavenworth High School has been having a program, sort of a pilot program, which has been pretty successful. Could you just maybe talk about that a little bit?
Well, just very timely, because there's an article in today's Leavenworth Times about our school-based program at Leavenworth High School, and it is very successful. We have one clinician there. She has seen over 100 youth during this time, but a very significant data that we're delivering there, personal data as well, about even saved lives as a result of that work in the school. And we'd like to put in this, the proposal that we're about to put before the voters would have put a clinician in every school in our county. So we're going to continue to push for that. We see that as essential, but again, at a more appropriate time in the county.
Yeah, in the spearhead, the point person for that particular program is Ms. Kim Knight, who's the assistant principal at Leavenworth High School.
Right.
And she's really been a champion for many years of this particular program, which is very important. And I consider it for the broader program that we recommended as part of our report last year as a very significant pilot program. And in addition to really helping our youth who are struggling with mental health issues, it also allows Kim and her team to develop insights and lessons that will benefit other schools when we get to the point, hopefully, of getting an approval from the voters sometime in the future and expanding the program to the schools countywide. So that's kind of my thoughts as far as that particular program, and we're very happy it's in place. Anything else, Mr. Ricard?
I don't think so.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it, and I want you to, if you pass along my appreciation and thanks to your staff for the work that they're doing during this, well, the work they always do, but particularly during this, these trying times over the last 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, and been thinking about them and know that they're doing their very best, and hopefully they're taking care of themselves and their families too, which I know they are.
Right.
But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
I'm going to start with just a review of the statistics at the state and county level, as I've done in previous town halls. So overall, at the national level, you know, we're up to more than 800,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases in the United States. And the death toll is rapidly approaching 45,000 Americans. And as we know, this is a very highly contagious and deadly disease. So, I mean, that's what those statistics at the national level convey to us. There's no debating that. And so that's kind of just an overview of what's happening nationally. But anybody, and I'm sure all of you are following the news, you know, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. In terms of the Kansas statistics as of yesterday, at 11 a.m., the number of cases, people who have tested positive for COVID-19 are 2,025. Hospitalizations, 419. Statewide deaths are 107. And the age range, once again, there was 0, which obviously means the baby contracted COVID-19. I've been reporting that for at least the last 3 weeks, if not 4. And then the oldest person who has contracted the disease is 99 years old. In terms of cases by gender, 1,042 of the cases are female. That represents about 51.5%. 979 of the cases are male, and that represents 48.3%, and then not reported is about 4, which is a 0.2%. So females a little higher in terms of the number of positive tests, the number of cases that the state is reporting. And then cases by age group, the number one age group, which surprised me when I looked at it this morning, is ages 20 through 34. There's 410 people in that age group who have tested positive, and that represents 20.2% of all the cases. Number 2 is people ages 55 to 64, 364, and that 364 people, that represents 18% of the people testing positive, the number of cases. Number 3, ages 45 through 54, 356 people, which is 17.6%. And number 4, once again going a little bit lower as far as age, 35 years of age to 44 years of age, 304 cases, 304 people who have tested positive for the virus, representing 15%. And for the baby boomers, ages 65 to 74, 245, they're the 5th highest age group with COVID-19. That represents a little over 12%. So in terms of counties, number 1 county is Wyandotte County in terms of 433 cases. 2, Johnson County, 384 cases. 3, Sedgwick, which is where Wichita is located, 251 cases. Ford County, 187 cases, and that's really kind of their numbers have been coming up in the last couple of weeks. And then finally, Leavenworth is the 5th highest with 136 cases. And just as of Douglas County, which is one of our neighboring counties, is at 43. In terms of Leavenworth, let me see, this was as of yesterday, 21 April, 3 p.m., confirmed positive cases, which I just mentioned, is 136, and 41 of these positive cases are counted as Lansing Correctional Facility inmates. That's the state prison in Lansing. Current number of patients hospitalized is 5, and I guess total hospitalized over the course of when these stats have been being reported the last 4 or 5 weeks, total hospitalized is 19. And there have been 3 deaths. There was a death that occurred either yesterday or Monday. It was pretty sure it was reported in the Leavenworth Times yesterday, so it was probably on Monday. And since our last town hall last Wednesday, I think on the 17th, which would have been last Friday, there was a second death. So a total of 3 deaths, unfortunately, within the county at this particular point in time. I'm going to give an update on some of the orders that have been issued by the governor, Governor Laura Kelly. Governor Laura Kelly recently issued Executive Orders 2024 and 2025. Executive Order 2024 is an extension of the original statewide stay-at-home order, and it is effective, this order, 2024, it extends that original order, which I believe was 2016, to 11:59 p.m. on May 3rd, 2020. Executive Order 2025 primarily outlines in detail the prohibition on gatherings of 10 or more people and gives examples of what is prohibited and what is exempt. This order is effective until May 1st. Let me talk a little bit about city services. Starting next week, the week of April 27th, which is next Monday, the city will open 2 city services on a limited basis with strict controls and safeguards in place. The recycling center and brush disposal site will each open for 2 days during the week, and the recycle center will also be open next Saturday. Next Saturday, a week from this coming Saturday, because we're talking about these 2 services being opened on effective the week of April 27th, which is next Monday. Okay, the recycle center will be open from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the first Tuesday and Wednesday will be next week. Users for the site will enter from the north side of the Municipal Center Service Center off of Pennsylvania Street and Lawrence Avenue. City staff will guide residents in their cars through the property to the recycling area, and users will exit from the normal recycling center gates. Cars and people will be limited to adhere to social distancing. And I know that the city manager and his staff have been analyzing and assessing this all along, and they've come to the conclusion, have made a recommendation to the mayor and the city commission, and this is what we're going to do. And I know that, I think you ran it by Mr. Miller, the county health officer, and he's good with it too. I know I've gotten a fair amount of emails or text messages on this, and I think it is the right thing to do. It's the right timing, and we're going to maintain all the social distancing and all the procedures and practices we have in place to keep people safe. Not only our citizens, but also the staff of the city who are going to be, conducting the operations. First at the recycling center and then at the brush site. The brush site will be open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Thursday and Friday. The site lends itself to social distancing, and staff will be on hand to ensure all rules are followed. So I think that's some pretty good news with respect to 2 city services that many of our citizens have come to rely on, and that we're glad at this point that we can open them up on a limited basis beginning the week of next Monday, Just a little quick update on the library. National Library Giving Day is tomorrow, April 23rd, and it's a quick and easy way to support the Leavenworth Public Library. During the shelter-in-place orders, the library director has told me and has told his patrons that the library has seen a significant increase in the use of the library's digital content, which makes sense, obviously, with the library being closed. In 2019, the library saw a 25% increase in demand for digital content. And the library director, our library director, plans to use the National Library Giving Day donations to grow the library's digital collection. He will also use the donations to expand the library's early literacy outreach programs and activity. So I think those are the main things with respect to the library, and these library updates are sent out every few days, not every day, but maybe every 2 or 3 days, or at least once a week. I think it's usually about every 2 or 3 days, so that's what's going on with your public library. City projects updates, that's my next category of information. Residents might have noticed some limited work being done on 10th Avenue, the section between Vilas and Michigan that was done last year. This work is part of the project and is done to enhance the quality of people driving their cars over that section of our streets. A profile graph, I think I pronounced that right, a profile graph machine takes measurements of imperfections on the pavement, and that data is used to mill those bumps out of the roadway. And this is what was happening last Saturday, and I think most of the work was accomplished on Saturday, and maybe they finished a little bit of it yesterday. It is a method commonly used and was most recently used several years ago on the reconstruction of Metropolitan Avenue, which was a state project, if I'm not mistaken. If you've driven down 4th Street recently, you've undoubtedly seen a large project at Stubby Park. Work is underway to install multiple play features, shade structures, a new sidewalk, a fence between 4th Street and the playground, and expanded parking. The project was actually a 2019 project that was delayed due to a stormwater project in the park. Now, is that stormwater project, is that done yet, Mr. Kramer?
Yes, it's complete.
Okay, so that's, we talked about that we talked about the projects and the state of the stormwater program last evening during our study session, and just remind people that if you're interested in finding out more information, we have a great web page on the city's website with the information, most of the information, a good deal of the information on the city's stormwater program. The next update is the Thornton Street reconstruction project from South 5th Street to 10th Avenue was currently on schedule with completion expected by October 2020. Crews are about 30 days away from starting work on the section of Thornton Street from Maple Avenue west to 10th Avenue. A full project update will be presented by staff at the May 5th study session. So that's a good news story. I think the weather's been reasonably good. We've had some thunderstorms in the last 3 or 4 weeks, but they haven't been excessive. And, when we don't have that rain, the weather's been good, I think, and the construction on that very, very important road improvement project has been continuing at a good pace. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager, Mr. Paul Kramer, to talk about a few other things relating to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a couple requests on Facebook to post those recycling center hours and brush disposal site. We will do that today, along with the hours and the days of operation for the recycling center. We're going to put a map on our website that shows exactly how you will enter the site and the checkpoints along the way. One other point on the recycling and the disposal site, it is a little more limited than our normal hours. The reason being, one, we're not sure of the demand, and two, it's going to require more city staff because we'll have sort of checkpoints along the route into the recycling area so we can fully control the traffic and the amount of people that are using the service at any one site. So those will be up here in the next couple hours, the maps along with the hours posted for that service. And again, those don't start till next week, the week of the 27th, the first day on Tuesday. The mayor mentioned the three large project updates that are going on in the city. I wanted to give you some updates on some other city programs and projects. First of all, we have made the decision to cancel the baseball and softball, the city recreation baseball and softball seasons for the year. Those were expected to kick off here in the next couple weeks. This is pretty much the practice that's gone on throughout the metro area with these summer programs. We are internally working on some ideas that if we're in a better place toward the end of the summer, we have no intention of bringing the full program back, but maybe something like some camps or something limited in scope, but we'll evaluate that as the season goes on. At this point, we don't have any definitive answer on the aquatics for the year at the Woolman Aquatic Center, which is scheduled to open at the end of May. That one's a little easier to push back, but we'll continue to monitor. I know a few metro area pools have closed already for the year. We haven't made that decision yet. We'll continue to monitor. We have a good stable of lifeguards and staff, so we would have availability to open a little bit later if that was prudent decision. So stay tuned on that one. CDBG stimulus funding, the mayor mentioned at the meeting last week that the city had received $201,000 in federal emergency community development block grant stimulus dollars. We have got the rules from HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the city will hold a public hearing. It would be 2 weeks from last night at our city commission meeting to amend our rules to allow us to use some of those funds to give small businesses grants. Without going too far into the details, that use was not in the city's authorized use document, which is our comprehensive plan. And so we have to amend that. HUD has waived a lot of the requirements on a 30-day public comment period. We're able to streamline that, but we still do have to hold that public hearing. So we'll do that in less than 2 weeks from yesterday at the city commission meeting, and then we will move forward with announcing how the city intends to use those funds, a combination of grants to third-party agencies in the community who are dealing with those most in need, and then also a program to get small grants out to small businesses in the community. As I've mentioned each week, the city still has employment opportunities. Our public safety, police and fire have openings. We also have openings for refuse collecting and also in the wastewater treatment plant. So the city's website, leavenworthks.org, is the place to find city job openings that are still out there. One more note that I thought was kind of interesting. The city has installed 9 baskets at Ray Miller Park, which will be the beginnings of our first disc golf course. So the baskets are out there. We have a devoted following of disc golfers in the community. So the baskets are out there, and we will be working over the next couple weeks to put in sort of what are the tee markers or the guideposts for each hole. So as you're looking for things to do this summer, if we're not quite back to normal, some of those activities that allow you to have distance but still enjoy our parks as you continue to take your walks and ride bikes and those type things. We'll have some availability for some disc golf out at Ray Miller Park. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any questions, Mr. Kramer?
No, I'll address one thing that I've seen on the Facebook feed. We have a little bit of a back and forth from some residents about whether the order should be lifted or extended. That's a valid discussion, and that's a discussion that individuals can have. I want to let the citizens know that the city of Leavenworth has no authority to lift or to put in place any kind of stay-home type orders. There's been a comment made that at some point maybe the mayors would have that discretion. That's not the case. The mayor of Leavenworth has no authority to put those kind of restrictions in place. In the state of Kansas, those authorities are given to the county health department. In a broader perspective, the city of Leavenworth follows the state orders, which we're under now, so we have no authority. And then going forward, the city of Leavenworth would be under whatever order was given by the county or the state. So I know that debate will continue to go back and forth. I do appreciate people being respectful in the discussion, and it's a valid question. I know everybody is interested in that question, but the city follows the orders that either come from the county or the state. So that's
okay. Thank you. I'm going to give a quick update, as I have during previous town halls, on kind of what's happening and the programs that are out there that our small businesses, many of whom, or most of whom, or at least many of whom have taken advantage of. One of them is the emergency injury disaster loan. That is the loan that's been out there on the books and available through the Small Business Administration for, I think, at least 20 years. And I know a lot of our small business owners have applied in the last few weeks, have applied for that particular loan. There was money in the CARES Act, which was, you know, the act, that the Relief Act that was passed about 3 weeks ago, that had the money in there, $350 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. There was also, part of that was, I believe, for the emergency injury disaster loan, or what the acronym is known as is EIDL. And the other program is the Paycheck Protection Program, and that is a program where the business owners, the small business owners, the business owners work through their lending institution, their banks, fill out all the application, the paperwork, and then the bank sends it in to the Small Business Administration. And when the funds are available, you know, the bank is notified, bank notifies their clients, and then the money is placed in the bank accounts of our small business owners. And just to give you a little idea of how important and how popular that program was, the banks first received guidance on the implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program on April 2nd. They received guidance in terms of what to do, how they would work with their clients, the application, the criteria, et cetera. They began the next day, April 3rd, taking applications from our small business owners. And I guess then on the 10th of April, about a week later, it was opened, this particular program was open to sole proprietors, in addition to the small business owners. And so during the period of, you know, like the 4th of April through the 15th of April, these applications were coming in, and the money was, during that period of time, was pretty much exhausted, was exhausted by the 16th of April. The money ran out. So what we have, and I've talked just on an informal basis with a handful of our bank presidents and CEOs late last week and Monday, and found out that generally they think the program worked well. Many of their clients, their small business owners, you know, have had the money placed in their accounts. They were able to get through that application process, and it worked fine. Others had completed all the application, all the documentation, but they're waiting for the next, the money had run out. The money ran out. So they're waiting on the next tranche of money, which should be available hopefully late this week. We found out yesterday the Senate passed the fourth CARES Act, or the fourth bill to provide relief, and I'll get into some of the details on that in a minute. The House has to come back. I don't know if they're coming back today or tomorrow, but they'll come back, vote on it, and then it'll go to the president for his signature, hopefully, if not on Thursday, by Friday. So this next tranche of money will be available for all those businesses that have done everything that they're supposed to do. The application has been sent to the SBA. They've been approved for the loan. The bank is just, you know, waiting for the money so they can put the money in the accounts of the small business owners. So, and then I think that's primarily it. There were some small number of business owners that maybe had some problems with the, you know, and weren't at that point where they're just waiting on the funds to be put into their account. And I would say, if you're in that category, give your financial institution a call, because next couple of days, if you can get your paperwork and your documentation revised and ready to go, that money, that next tranche of money is going to be available. So you just got to and there's plenty of information out there on how it works. And the main thing is just call your underwriters or your bankers, and they will help you. And I know that the bankers from the local community aspect really worked well in terms of sharing insights and lessons on how to facilitate that. This was, you know, a lot of technology. It was a new program, and I think I know their mindset was to do the very best they could for their clients, and not only locally, but I've heard some of the bank presidents told me that even regionally and within the state, they've been on the phone. The bank presidents have been on the phone with one another, just doing their very best and trying to figure out how best to facilitate and get their clients in a position where they can be awarded this money and the money be put in their accounts. So I applaud them, and they're, you know, a little bit under the radar, but I'm aware, talking to a handful of them, that they've really stepped up like so many other members of our community, so many other members of our state, and so many other members of our nation have stepped up in various areas to help citizens and business owners survive this very, very tough time we're in now. Let me talk a little bit about because the headline was Senate passes $484 billion coronavirus relief package, and that they did that last night. How that money breaks down, how that $484 billion breaks down, is $310 billion for small business relief, including $60 billion specifically for community banks and smaller lenders, which, you know, most of our banks are in that category, but that's good. So $310 billion for small business relief, including $60 billion specifically for community banks and smaller lenders, $75 billion for hospitals, $25 billion for testing, and then $60 billion for that EIDL loan that I was talking about, the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan, which business owners apply directly to the Small Business Administration for that loan. But that was very popular in the first CARES Act, the third coronavirus relief bill. There was $18 billion allocated for that EIDL loans, and now there's another $60 billion. So my guidance last week, or the week before, or maybe both weeks, was for have business owners apply for both of those loans, and that guidance still is valid. You know, and there's also, I know that the Leavenworth Main Street organization last week put out a survey trying to get some feedback from small businesses within the city of Leavenworth in terms of how they were doing, whether they were open, if they were open, how they were delivering their services, curbside delivery, whether they had applied for the EIDL or the Paycheck Protection Program. And I think by Friday there'll be some, and they used a Survey Monkey, so it was a pretty basic survey, but I think it'll give us an idea of how our small businesses as a community overall are doing. And I can share next week during the town hall any insights that we gain from business owners filling out that survey, that online survey. And I would encourage business owners to go to the Leavenworth Main Street website and click on that survey and take it. That would be very helpful. And I know that, I think it was on Monday, it may have been on Friday, that Mr. Steve Jack, who's the director of the Leavenworth County Development Center, passed along via email, transmitted a 26-question survey from some of the regional Kansas City economic development organizations that really taking a deeper dive into small business owners, all types of businesses, that how they're faring during this economic crisis and whether they were able to take advantage of these programs that I just mentioned. So I think that date is, well, I think they're supposed to release their report by maybe the 1st of May, which won't be available by next Wednesday, but maybe in a future Facebook Live Town Hall, I could share that information too. But if you can participate in that, I would encourage you to do that. The more participants, I would think the more valid the findings will be. I just want to quickly talk about, I was made aware this morning of a new Network Kansas has publicized or say that they've, it's called a Restart Kansas County Loan Fund. And I won't get into too much of the detail, but this Restart Kansas County Loan Fund is a fund that's been created to provide loans to businesses within Kansas. Now, Network Kansas currently has more than 40 administrative support organizations and 64 e-communities, and one of those e-communities is right here in Leavenworth, and our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Taylor Tedder, is the chairman of that community, I believe, with representatives from Leavenworth Main Street and other LCDC and other organizations that, you know, work on evaluating applications for the network, for the e-community loans. But this is a new one, and the only requirements, and by the way, these loans will be up to $20,000. I think the terms are 48 months at 2% interest, which is relatively low, and there'll be 4 months of deferred payments. I'm not going to get too much more. I'm sure we'll post this on our, maybe our COVID-19, first of all, our economic development page as part of our city website, and we'll probably put a link on there and put it on our COVID-19 webpage, so it's available in both locations. It's a one-pager, gives the information that businesses would need to apply for this new loan. And of course, if you did have a specific question, calling the Assistant City Manager, Mr. Taylor Tedder, I don't think would be a problem. And his number is 913-684-2602. He's very knowledgeable about all these Network Kansas programs, and probably is getting up to speed on this particular loan. So that's just some late-breaking information. I saw something from Representative Jeff Pittman, who's our representative for the 41st House District, a few days ago on Facebook, and it's referenced the Hero Relief Fund. And he indicated on his post that Governor Kelly announced last Friday that as of April 20th, 2020, child care subsidies will be available to qualifying essential workers. In order to qualify, families must have countable gross income at or below 250% of the federal poverty level. For an average family of 4, that equals a monthly income of $5,458. The Hero Relief Fund program also supports child care providers by providing a menu of stipends and grants to assist during the pandemic. Those who qualify should apply at www.kshero.relief.com, www.kshero.relief.com. And Representative Pittman also said feel free to reach out to him at jeff@votepittman.com. So that's another, first time we've talked about that program, but I became aware of that as he posted last week. I think it was over the weekend, maybe it was Saturday, a new Facebook post on that new program. Finally, today marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So April 22nd. 50th anniversary of Earth Day. A little background, I talked a little bit about this last night at the end of our study session. In 1970, a bold show of support for defending our public health from the effects of pollution coalesced around like-minded conservative and progressive lawmakers who were alarmed by deteriorating environmental conditions. Teaming up with student activists, they organized demonstrations and teach-ins that would eventually become Earth Day, a worldwide movement that would bring in environmental stakeholders, faith groups, and other community organizations. In the end, it was a common cause of public health and the long-term impacts that 150 years of industrial development was having on it that brought so many disparate groups together. And despite this momentous milestone, which is this 50-year anniversary of Earth Day, 2020 is also a year of great public health concern and precautionary social distancing and other best practices due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This has caused most Earth Day celebrations and cleanups to be postponed or canceled, And even though we can't come together to celebrate as planned, there are still ways to be involved in Earth Day 2020 from home. And there's particularly using, if you have the internet, if you have a computer, there are things you can do virtually. And there were a few ideas that came out in this announcement. Actually, it was from the Mid-America Regional Council, which is a leading economic development council representing the Mid-America, Kansas City metro area and beyond in terms of economic development for our communities within that region. But they recommended, this information came out, and there are a few ideas in terms of what could be done virtually to celebrate at recyclespot.org, recyclespot.org. And I'm not gonna go in, there were 12 or 13 things, 7 or 8 of them were virtual, but they did mention something that you could actually do, you know, in person, in the flesh, and this is near and dear to my heart in terms of the appearance and image of our city, but it's, if you're out there walking, and by the way, I think that's one of the things I've seen in the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, is a lot more people walking, running, walking their dogs around the community in the city of Leavenworth, but if you maybe could, on some of those walks, you know, lace up your sneakers and turn it into an exercise by going on a plog. But what we're talking about is going out and just picking up litter, trash along our roadways or in some of the parks, and but maintaining that social distance requirement, and using a grabber or wear gloves and a mask to protect you from poison ivy or getting cut or something like that. And if you're doing it along a roadway, particularly if it's a busier roadway, you've got to be very, very safe. And so I would encourage you to do that. And if there's any question, don't do it along one of our more heavily trafficked roadways. But there's plenty of opportunities out there. And I think as I do this in the next week and take some walks, that I'll take my own advice and take a trash bag with me and my grabber and gloves, wear my mask, which by the way is right here. And while I'm talking about it, I want to thank Miss Lenora Kenwolf, who brought this mask and several others and dropped them off at the city clerk's office, and was able to give some to the city staff here within City Hall, and also took a few home. And I've been using it, and this was about, well, I think it was last week from yesterday, so it was a week ago Tuesday. And it's a great piece of craftsmanship, and I really appreciated it. Sent her a thank you note. And there are other ladies who are doing the same thing within our community, and really on a pretty remarkable scale. And one of the ladies with a group of 3 friends, Carla Ducote Wellborn, is up to about 2,000 masks. So those are the ladies I've been made aware of just by, you know, monitoring Facebook. I know there's some other ladies, some other people who are doing that, but thank you very much for doing that. And I'd encourage, it's not a requirement, at least within the city and within the state, but I encourage people when they go out, they're going to the grocery store or doing an essential activity, going to the pharmacy at one of the local drugstores to put on the mask. And I know on Fort Leavenworth, if you go to Fort Leavenworth and you're going to the commissary or the PX or Munson Army Health Center, and there's one other, the Shopette, you do have to wear a mask. That is a requirement, and I had mentioned that last week. And if you're interested in terms of, you know, what's going on at Fort Leavenworth, the garrison commander, Colonel Hung, holds a weekly, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5:30, he holds a Facebook Live town hall. It usually lasts about a half an hour, and he puts out really good information too. So just my final comments.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a couple
Okay.
things that some of our watchers or viewers would like us to touch on. BJ asks, or just sort of makes a statement, talk about the land exchange with the school board. He's referring to the Brewer Park land exchange.
I'm going to give a general overview, and then I'm going to ask the city manager to fill in the details. We dealt with that last Tuesday, not yesterday, but during our regular meeting, which we had been working on for better part of the last 8 or 9 months. And what we actually, in terms of Brewer Park, the tennis courts there and most of Brewer Park, or maybe all of Brewer Park, that was a USD 453 Leavenworth School District property, of which we were on a contract leasing it for, I don't know how many, 20 years, 25 years.
25.
That was coming up, well, it has come up that the lease was running out, and so something had to be done. At the same time, the USD 453 Board of Education and Superintendent wanted to do some things, or want to do some things in the future with respect to improving their concession facilities and putting in a baseball field for their softball and baseball high school teams in 10th Avenue Park, which is the city's park. And so they recommended or proposed us swapping a piece of 10th Avenue Park, which is, was it west of
the football stadium.
west of the football stadium, and that's the land swap that we finalized at our meeting a week ago yesterday. And as I said, it impacts the Leavenworth Soccer Association, but we were working, and so was USD 453, very closely with their board of directors over the last 8 or 9 months to ensure that there would continue to be adequate fields for practice. It doesn't affect their game fields at all. Those are still on the normal locations at 10th Avenue Park, but it does, what we'll be able to do is at Brewer Park, we'll be able to allocate some of that space, some of that land for practices, soccer practices, plus there's a lot of practice fields still available at 10th Avenue Park. And so that's what happened there. And Mr. Kramer, can you add anything else, or?
The only other question, and I certainly don't want to speak for the school district, the only other question that we've gotten a couple of times is the idea that, a sports field was renovated here in the last 10 years, and what about that? And what I would say to that is Sports Field is a relatively small park. It's a beautiful park. It's heavily used, but the school district doesn't have exclusive use. We have American Legion Ball, we have traveling tournaments, we have the city's rec leagues. And I think what the school district was looking for was a place where they could have summer camps and two-a-days and and also have it consolidated around some school property. I don't think that's anything that most schools in 5A or 6A in the state of Kansas have. I think their view is that it put them at a competitive disadvantage. Sports Field also only has one regulation baseball field. The other one doesn't have a mound on it. So they had some trouble with getting the amount of work that their teams needed to be able to do on that. I think that it's a phased plan over a number of years, so I would expect them to be at Sports Field for a long time for their games, and they may continue to play their games. I don't know if there's any ever plans for lighting at this district complex, but to be able to, again, maximize their use of that area with their football field and their stadium and their track there, putting in some restroom facilities, putting in some concessions facilities, and then sort of joining the other ranks of 5A and 6A schools with their own baseball complex. They have that for tennis, and they have it for football, and they have it for track. And at baseball, they're sort of subject to non-exclusive use of Sports Field. So that's all I would add.
Is there another question?
We did have one more question, and I'll take this one. It was a question on 10th Avenue, and the question as stated was, are the costs associated with milling 10th being paid for by taxpayers, or is it being paid by the contractor who did the substandard work initially? I'll note that the substandard work is a false premise. The work was not substandard. It's a complex project because of the nature of the subgrade, the concrete deterioration of the subgrade on 10th. And so the bumps were not unexpected. And yes, to the first part, the milling is part of the contract. So there's no supplemental contract to come in and do the profilograph and the milling. So that is part of the original project. And we were just waiting till the spring came around and we had some warmer temperatures to do that work.
Okay, is that it for a question? Yep. Okay, so just, I'm gonna wrap up here in the next minute or two. So just a reminder, and I do this at the end of each one of these Facebook Live town halls, is that during this COVID-19 health crisis, the overriding priority of the City Commission, the City Manager, and City staff is to do our very best to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all Leavenworth citizens. And as I said for the first time 5 or 6 weeks ago, in focusing on this priority, our intent was to share pertinent, accurate information relating to COVID-19, which these Facebook Live town halls are part of that effort, but also the websites that we have here within the city. I think the county is doing a good job in terms of getting that information out, as is the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. There's plenty of information out there. I think we're making good decisions of not putting everything on our city website because it can be a little overwhelming, but good, accurate, pertinent information is very, very important in a crisis like we're experiencing right now. And the other thing is just keeping our citizens updated in terms of the adjustments that we've had to make with city services. And of course, we've done that today, and we're gonna start providing, once again, on a limited basis, but certainly providing services for recycling and the brush site. So that's some good news. And then finally, just advocating for small businesses, and I talk about that a little bit each Facebook Live town hall in terms of just trying to get the information out there. Most of the great work's being done by the small business owners themselves, working with their bankers, maybe asking Mr. Will Katz, who helps Leavenworth Main Street with certain things regarding business plans and businesses, who's the director of the Small Business Development Center at the University of Kansas, and has been a great asset for many of the business owners within Leavenworth. And I talk to him about once a week, try to get an update from him. So that's what's going on. That's the rationale behind these town halls, and kind of our rationale in terms of trying to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all our citizens. And finally, once again, my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone, all the healthcare workers, obviously, but also everyone else who's on the front lines within our grocery stores, our pharmacies. It's hard to, identify each category of people, but it is an expansive category that people are, particularly in those essential businesses, who are going to work each and every day and doing their jobs so we can continue to get the essential services that we need as citizens and as a community. So my thanks and kudos to doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, nurses aides, pharmacy technicians, grocery store workers, and everybody else who's on the front lines here during this health crisis, and also the consequences with the consequences that we're feeling economically. And then just a reminder, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I mentioned the healthcare workers as far as just imploring us that what they said as far as we stayed at work for you, and asking us as citizens to please stay at home for them. So I would continue to emphasize that. Just go out, to do the essential things, but I do see some things on Facebook, and I take everything with a grain of salt when I read something on Facebook, but I think in some of the big box stores, there's still some people who are bringing, all their family members in there. And I know sometimes maybe that's the only thing that can be done, but if you have anybody, and another adult or an older child who could watch the other children, instead of going to the store with 4 or 5 people, just go in there yourself and try to take care of business. Now, I know that can't be done in all circumstances, but I would encourage people to do that. And I'd encourage people also when they go out, although it's not a requirement, I think it's a very, very good important health practice to wear a mask. And there's plenty of them available within the community from what I can tell. So the next Facebook Live Town Hall will be next Wednesday, and we'll do it at the same time, 11 a.m. I'm not sure I will have a guest expert. I'm not sure who it's going to be. It may be Mr. Katz, Mr. Will Katz, who might be pretty timely since this 4th CARES Act, this 4th coronavirus relief bill is going to be signed either tomorrow or Friday, and maybe he can come in and talk to us a little bit about that and how he sees our small businesses within our city and within our region doing. So with that, have a good rest of your Wednesday and a good rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good morning.